Hey, friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Vav, Daf 36 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, Daf 36, so Lamaisa we go weiter shtickle with regarding somebody who does chalitza with his Yevamo, and it turns out that she's pregnant. So what do we do? That kind of situation, how does it apply to the tzara? Things like that. Very exciting stuff. Friends, let's jump in. When Daf Lamed Vav 2, 4, 6 or so lines in, so maybe 7 lines in, Tane Kavasi de Reuvens. When Daf Lamed Vav, about 7 lines in, the first word on the line, Tane Kavasi de Reuvens. Uwa. So we have a brisa supporting Rava. What did Rava say? The last thing that we learned yesterday was Rava says that when you have the Yevam, right? So Reuven's married to Saras, and Hillel, as Hillel Lester pointed out, Reuven always dies. So Reuven dies, and Shimon needs to do Yibum. So, but it turns out that Saras is pregnant. So says Rava that we only can go based on once the baby is born, right? So even if the baby is healthy, that only once sort of the baby is born can we ascertain that Chalitza and Yibum is irrelevant, since ultimately Reuven has progeny. So Tanakavosa de Rava, we have a brisa supporting Rava. What does the brisa say? Hakone sivimto, givaldik. Shimon does. Somebody honked his horn. I'm giving you the play-by-play of what's going on in Yerushalayim. Somebody just honked their horn in Yerushalayim. Tanakavosa de Rava, hakone sivimto. So Shimon does yibum. Oh, and also somebody's yelling in the park. Shimon does yibum with Saras. V'nimtzeis muberes. And it turns out that Saras is taka pregnant. So they did Yibum. Turns out that Saras is taka pregnant with Reuven's baby. Hariza lo tinase Saras also. So if that's the case, well then, if Reuven had 2 wives, right, Saras and also Rivka, so Rivka cannot, she's kind of pending. She can't get remarried yet. Because Shem Yevolad ben Kayama, because maybe the child will be a healthy child. The ein bia v'chalitza poteres, and the yibum or chalitza that Shimon has done with Saras is not going to work. Ela valod poter. Rather, the yingle, the baby, when he's born, is going to, right at that point, once the baby is born, and it's a healthy baby, so then Memele Reuven has progeny, which means that Saras and Rivka don't need to do Yibum or Chalitza, and therefore at that point, once the baby is born and the baby is healthy, so Memele Reuven had progeny, so Yibum is irrelevant here, and then Rivka, the co-wife, can get married to whoever she wants. V'avolod eino potra ein potra ad shietz lava olam. However, the child that is born is only once the child is actually born. At that point, we could say, okay, there was a healthy baby, Reuven has progeny, Yibum and Chalitza is irrelevant. Now the Gemara asks, well, it sounds like we're saying that the reason why Rivka can now get remarried is because the baby was born and the baby was a healthy baby. But what if the baby was not a healthy baby, which means that Saras gave birth to a baby who did not survive, so Reuven does not have progeny. So mipater tsarosa, implying that but if halo have valad ben kayama mipater tsarosa, well then the tzara is pater. Right, meaning we had just said that the tzara cannot get remarried until the baby is born. But if the baby does not survive, so then the tzara can get remarried. She's pater. So leimet havetuf to do Rish Lakish. This sounds like a question of Rish Lakish, because remember we had the machlokas yesterday between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says that if you do chalitza or yibum with a woman who's pregnant, right? So if Saras is pregnant and Shimon does yibum or chalitza, so that works as chalitza. You don't have to do chalitza again, after, let's say, if the baby is not healthy, so you don't need to do Yibum or Chalitza again, you already did it. Whereas Rish Lakish says, no, it doesn't, you can't do Yibum or Chalitza with a pregnant woman, it does not work. Now over here we seem to be saying that if Sarah gives birth to a baby and the baby does not survive, so Rivka is pater, right? She doesn't need to do Yibum or Chalitza, which implies, like Rabbi Yochanan, that the Yibum or the Chalitza that was done with a pregnant woman counts. So they might have it, you have to do Rish Lakish. Should say it's a kasha and Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish will respond, Hachi katani. No, this is how to learn the brisa. Hakoni sivimto, that if Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, v'nimtzeis muberes, and it turns out that she's pregnant, harei zo lo tinasei tzaraso. So Rivka cannot get remarried just yet. Shema lo yehivalod ben kayama, because what happens if the child will not survive? V'chalitzas muberes lo shma chalitza, ubias muberes lo shma chalitza, ubia, and the chalitza that Shimon did with Sarah, or the Yibum that Shimon did with Sarah, when she's pregnant is irrelevant, and therefore you would have to do chalitza or Yibum again, right? So therefore Rish Lakish understands the brisa to actually say that the reason why Rivka cannot get remarried just yet is because if the child does not survive, so then they'll have to do Yibum or Chalitza again. That the Yibum or Chalitza that Shimon did with Sarah when she was pregnant did not count. But maybe you'll suggest, yes, but can't you just go based on the majority? And the majority of women, thank God, give birth to healthy children. But Volod ein poter ad she'etzi lover olam. Yes, but the child, we can only go based on once the child is born. We can't just assume that most children are going to be healthy, and therefore it's like Rav who says that we can only go based on when the child is actually born. Right, so that was like what Rav said. I don't know what you said, but that's like what Rav said, that we go based on once the baby is born. Omer Belazar, so now it says Rabbi Belazar, Efshir Isa lehad Rish Lakish v'lotnan la b'masnisin. So says Rabbi Belazar, is it possible that Rish Lakish can have this opinion that Yibum and Chalitza does not work for a pregnant woman? Is it possible that that's Rish Lakish's opinion and we don't have a Mishnah to support it? No, fa'adog ve'ashkoch. So Belazar went out and he found the Mishnah. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Isha sheholach bayla v'tzaras l'medinas hayom. So, sorry. Her husband, Reuven, goes on a trip with her co-wife, Rivka. Alright? What do I tell you? Rivka and Reuven go on a trip, and Sarah stays home. Alright. So they come and they tell Sarah, Meis bailech, Reuven, your husband, gestorben. He's dead. Harezo lo tinose v'lo tisyabim. Now, Sarah is a shtickle stuck. She can't get remarried. She can't do Yibum ad sheteda until she knows exactly what happened. Because Shema Mu'uberesi Sarasa, because maybe Rivka was taka pregnant. And if she's pregnant, so then we don't exactly know. So if she's pregnant, then Reuven died. If Rivka is pregnant, she's pregnant with a healthy child, so then Yibum is irrelevant. But if it's not a healthy child, then Yibum is relevant. So Bishlama Yabume Lo. So I understand why Sarah would not do Yibum right now, because Shema Yevolod ben Kayom. Well, because if Rivka is pregnant and she has a healthy child, well then Vivka Biser Eishes Och Deiraisa, right? Meaning Reuven died. Rivka was on the trip with her. We don't know if Rivka was pregnant or not. So we're saying Sarah cannot do Yibum with Reuven's brother Shimon, because if it turns out that Rivka is pregnant with a healthy baby, so then Reuven had progeny. If Reuven had progeny, so then Yibum is irrelevant. And if Shimon and Sarah were to do Yibum in such a case, if Reuven had progeny, well then Shimon would simply be sleeping with his brother's wife, which of course is not allowed. So Ella losachlots, rather, but okay, fine. So I understand why Sarah should not do Yibum with Shimon, because just in case Rivka is pregnant with a healthy baby. But lo sachlotz amai. But why can't she do chalitza? Right? Why can't Shimon and Sarah, why don't they do chalitza? Bishlama tachlotz besoch tes v'tinosi besoch tes lo hainu sofik. Okay, so I understand why Sarah cannot do chalitza within 9 months of hearing about Reuven's death and also get married within that time. Because what happens if Rivka is pregnant and she gives birth to a healthy boy, which means that chalitza and yibum is irrelevant. However, it only becomes, right, we only can know that the child is a healthy boy or a healthy baby once the baby is born 9 months later. So says the Gemara, I understand why Shimon and Sarah can't do chalitza within 9 months, and Sarah also then get married to somebody else within 9 months, because if the baby is a healthy baby, that would only sort of invalidate the need for yibum and chalitza once the baby is actually born, which will be 9 months later. So Ella tachlotz besoch tisha v'tinasi la'achar tisha, but why can't she do chalitza within 9 months, but only get married after 9 months? Memela, the baby's already been born, and there's no need for yibum or chalitza. But right, so therefore, from the fact that we are not suggesting that she get married afterwards, it must be because the chalitza that was done within 9 months does not work, right? Meaning, why doesn't Shimon and Sarah, why don't they could do chalitza within 9 months, and then but she'll only get married after 9 months, right? So even if the child is, even if she's pregnant, she has a child, after 9 months the baby is born and Reuven has progeny, and they don't need to do yibum or chalitza. Fine. But why don't we suggest that she can at least do chalitza within the 9 months? So rather it must be because you can't do chalitza with a pregnant woman. So therefore it's a proof for Rish Lakish. Right? So perfecting Gemara, that's not necessarily a good proof for Rish Lakish to say that from the fact that we didn't suggest that she do yibum, that she do chalitza within 9 months, it must be because chalitza for a pregnant woman doesn't work. No. Well, tachlotz v'tinose la'achar tes. According to you, Rish Lakish, right? If we're saying this is a proof for Rish Lakish, well then just let her do chalitza and get married all after 9 months, and then even according to Rish Lakish that would work. But the Brisa doesn't say that. Rather, it says that Sarah needs to wait until she knows what happens with Rivka. Meaning, it doesn't say that she could just wait 9 months and then do chalitza. It says that she can't do anything for however long until she finds out what happened with Rivka. Was she pregnant? Wasn't she pregnant? Was there a baby? Healthy? Not? Ela barmina de'ahi. You can't bring a proof from that Mishnah. De'abai bar Ovin v'Chanina bar Ovin darmitavayu, that they both say Shem yevolod ben kayamo, because what if the child ends up being a healthy child? V'nimtza atamatzricha koruz lichihuna. That in that particular case, we are concerned that what happens if Rivka gives birth to a healthy child, and if Rivka gives birth to a healthy child, so then Mimele Reuven has progeny, in which case Yibum and Chalitza is irrelevant. Now, if Yibum and Chalitza is irrelevant, then the Chalitza that Shimon and Sarah did is not really a Chalitza, which means that Sarah would be allowed to marry a Kohen, right? Because a Chalutza cannot marry a Kohen. But if Rivka gave birth to a healthy boy, so there was no need for a healthy baby, so then there's no need for Chalitza to begin with, in which case she's allowed to marry a Kohen. But in this particular case, we're recommending that they do not do Chalitza until we know the status of Rivka, because Shamiyeh Valad ben Kayama, maybe the child will be a healthy child, V'nimtza, and if the baby's a healthy child, then there was no need for Chalitza, V'nimtza atamatzricha karuz l'chuna, and they're going to have to make a public announcement, proclamation, to make sure that everybody knows that it wasn't really a chalitza, and that she's allowed to marry a kohen. In fact, the Gemara v'litzrucha. So what? So announce that that taka the chalitza wasn't necessary, and she's allowed to marry a kohen. Well, the meika inish. Well, you might have somebody who was at the chalitza but wasn't necessarily at the announcement. And then they might conclude incorrectly that a chalutza is permitted to marry a kohen, which of course is not allowed. So therefore, that is why we do not do chalitza within the 9 months. Omele Abaye. Now, Abaye asked the kasha, Midi lo sachlotz v'lo katane. Does the Mishnah say anything about that Sarah lo tachlot, she shouldn't do chalitza v'lo tesabim, she shouldn't do yibum? It doesn't say that. Lo tinasev v'lo tesabim katane. It says that Sarah should not get married, she should not do yibum below chalitza, without chalitza. Avali chalitza hachinami d'shayib. You can argue that if Sarah would have done chalitza during this time, so then taka, it would work. It would be a good chalitza, in which case it's taka akasha. Or you could say it doesn't support Rish Lakish at all, because maybe you could argue from this Mishnah that if she did do chalitza within this time, taka would work, like Rabbi Yochanan. Alright, fine. So therefore, Abai says you can't necessarily bring a proof from this Mishnah. However, Tana Kavasi de Rish Lakish, we talk of a brisa supporting Rish Lakish, Hacholitz l'muberes v'ipila, that if a fellow does chalitza with a woman who's pregnant and she miscarries, tzricha chalitza minach, and she nonetheless needs chalitza, i.e., the chalitza that she had done while she was pregnant does not work, so it's taka brisa supporting Rish Lakish. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav, says Rav Ilchsa Kavasa de Rish Lakish Banach Tlos. So says Rav that the halacha is taka like Rish Lakish in the following 3 instances. Chada Hadamaran. So one is that which we just said, that chalitza does not work for a pregnant woman. Idach, the second example, it's not. Taka have a Mishnah. Now, mechalik nechosov al piv, ribelechod u'miyit lechod, v'shveloi mesabchor dvav kayomen. You hear that, friends? Of course, in general, when it comes to inheritance, so the firstborn gets twice as much as the other kids, right? So let's say you have, 3 kids. So then the second and third kid get the same amount, and the first kid gets twice as much as the other 2. But let's say let's say he's got 3 houses or whatever, and he's got 3 kids, he's got 3 houses, and they're all the same value, let's say, and he gives one to Reuven, one to Shimon, one to Levi. So he can do that, right? And then he has no more property. So Mimele means that Kilu, the Bechor is not getting twice as much as everybody else, but he's dividing it up however he wants. That's okay, right? So Machalik Nechosov Al Piv, if the father divides up his property and he divides it however he wants, Riba Lechod, Mid Lechod, he gave more to this one, less to that one, Vishveloi Misabechor, or he gave the firstborn as much as everybody else. Dvar Kayaman, it's fine. Vim Amr Mishum Yerusha. But if he says I'm doing it as an inheritance, well then it doesn't work, because inheritance has rules. The Bechor gets twice as much, everybody else gets equal. But if here he's not dividing it up as an inheritance, but as a gift, and he's gifting them, this one he gives more, this one he gives less, and so in that case, then it works, because he can give the gift however he wants. V'im amr mishum Yerusha, lo amr klum. Fine. Kosov, bim batchila, bim basov, bim be'emzif, he wrote it down, and he mentions the gift part, whether at the beginning of the writing, whether at the end of the writing, whether in the middle of the writing, mishum matone, that it's a gift, dvar kayaman, so it works. It doesn't matter where he mentions it, as long as he says there's something epis about a gift, so then it works. V'am Rish Lakish, it says Rish Lakish, la'olam, lo kana at shiyomar ploni ufloni yershu sade plonus uflonus nesatim loim b'matone v'yarshum. So Rashi points out that this is talking about a case where he's got 2 kids. To one of them he doesn't mention anything about a gift. To the other one he mentions something about a gift. So Rabbi Yochanan says that to the one that he only mentions the inheritance and not a gift, so then it doesn't work. But to the one who we mentioned the gift, it does work. So now it says Rish Lakish, the olam lo kana ad shiyomer ploni ufloni yarshu sade plonus uflonus. Shenisatim loim bimatona. That I'm giving this one this and that one that I'm giving to them as a gift, v'yarshum, and they'll inherit it. Meaning that he's mentioning the fact that it's a gift to in both instances, right? You can't just mention the gift to like only one child. He has to mention the gift to both of them. All right, and we pass like Rish Lakish there. Vidach in the third case, the Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah, Kosev kon chosov livno la'achar moso. So if you have a father, and he writes all of his property to his son, right? So he's got some apple orchards, and he writes it off to his kid. Now it belongs to his kid, but the father can still get benefit from the apple orchard for the rest of his life. So he can still eat the apples and stuff like that. So basically, he has, right, the apples are in his possession, but technically the orchards belong to his son. Okay, it's probably some like tax hack or something like that. Fine. So so the father cannot sell the field because it's not his. He gave it to his kid. And the kid can't sell the field because, practically speaking, the fruits are in the possession of the father. He has access to them. So if the father nonetheless sells the field or sells the fruits, so they're sold because they're his. Until he dies, and then once he dies, then he can no longer get benefit from the fruits, and the field itself belongs to the kid. So then whoever bought the benefit of the fruit can no longer get benefit once the father dies. If the child sells the fruits, ein lokech klum, the purchaser can't get anything until the father dies, because as long as the father is still alive, the fruits, the father has access to the fruits, the son cannot sell them. V'itman, it was stated, what happens if the child sold the fruits while the father was alive? Okay, so we said that whoever he sells it to cannot get access to the fruits because they're still, right, the father has access to them. And then the child dies before the father, right? So we said if the child sells the access to the fruits, and then the father dies. So once the father dies, the person who the son sold it to can get benefit from that point on, right? As long as the father's alive, the father's the one who has access to the fruits. But the son sold the access to the fruits to this other fellow. Once the father dies, this other fellow can get benefit. But if the son dies before the father, so then what? The son sold the benefits of the fruits to this other fellow. So the other fellow, practically speaking, cannot get benefit from it because the father's still alive. The son then dies before the father does. So Rabbi Yochanan says, well, the buyer from the son does not acquire anything. Right? The father's still alive, the son's dead. Whereas Rish Lakish says no, that the purchaser did buy it, and when the father dies, he'll be able to get benefit from it. Rabbi Yochanan says that the buyer does not actually get the fruits. Because whoever owns the fruits owns the body. That's how it's treated. Meaning if the father has access to the fruits, well then he basically owns the entire field, and therefore the son had no right to sell it. For that it says Rish Lakish that the buyer has actually purchased the fruits, and when the father dies, he will be able to access the fruits, because kinyan peris kikinyan, no, where am I? Kinyan peris lav kikinyan aguf dummy, because whoever owns the fruits doesn't necessarily own the actual property, and therefore, if the father gave the orchard to his son as a gift, even though he still has access to it, it doesn't necessarily make it like it's his. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, yes, if the father's the one who has access to the fruits, then it's basically still his field. But it says Rish Lakish, no, even though the father has access to the fruits of the field, nonetheless it still belongs to the son. And if the son sells the rights to the fruits, so then and then dies, so the buyer will not be able to have access to the fruits while the father is still alive. But once the father dies, so then he'll be able to have access to the fruits. Continues the Mishnah in Avolad Shakayom V'chulei Uwa. So the last part of the Mishnah had said that if Shimon, right, so Reuven was married to Sarah, and then Reuven dies, so then Shimon marries Sarah, Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, and it turns out that she is pregnant. So we said that Eina Volod Shel Kayama, if the child does not survive, so then Reuven doesn't have progeny. So Memele, Shimon and Sarah did Yibum. And it says in the Mishnah that they could stay together. Because Reuven doesn't have progeny, so Shimon and Sarah do Yibum, and they can stay together if the child did not survive. Tana Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amru Yotzi Beget. However, they said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that they should nonetheless get divorced. That it's a fine, right? Because since he went into the Isser of Eishes Och, right? Because this child, right? If Sarah would have given birth to a healthy baby, so then Reuven has progeny, and there was no reason for Shimon and Sarah to do Yibum, in which case he's sort of getting himself into a situation of Safek Eishes Och. So therefore, says Rabbi Eliezer, even if the child does not survive, and Reuven does not have progeny, still they should not remain together. Shimon needs to give Sarah a get, because of this Safek, that he put himself in a situation of Safek Eishes Och. Amar Rava, says Rava, Reb Meir, Reb Eliezer, Amud over Echad. Says Rava that Reb Meir and Reb Eliezer are on the same page. How come? Reb Eliezer Adamarn. So Reb Eliezer, that which we just said, which is that even if the child does not survive, still Shimon and Sarah need to get divorced. Reb Meir Detanya. And Reb Meir, we have the following Bryce Adamu Beres Chaveru Menekas Chaveru. That if you have Reuven's married to Sarah, okay, and Reuven dies. Now his friend Shimon, not his brother Shimon, but his friend Shimon, now marries Sarah. But the thing is that Sarah is pregnant, or Sarah is nursing. So the Brisa says that you can't marry your friend's widow who is pregnant or nursing. And says Reb Meir that if they do get married, well, then they have to get divorced, and they can never get remarried. And said the Chachamim that, look, you have to, they can't stay together, Shimon and his friend, Shimon and Reuven's widow, Sarah, cannot get married, but after, but they did get married, so then they have to get divorced. But after 24 months, after she's done nursing, then they can get remarried. So according to Meir, they can never get remarried. According to Chacham, they can get remarried ultimately. Now says Abaye, how do we know that Rabbi Eliezer, who says that in the case of Yibum, they cannot remain married, and Reb Meir, who says that when it comes to your friend's wife who's pregnant or nursing, they cannot remain married? How do you know that they're on the same team, that they're on the same page? Dilmalo, maybe they're not on the same page. The reason why Rabbi Eliezer says by Yibum that even if the child does not survive, Shimon and Sarah may not remain together is because they got themselves into a situation of a suffix of Eishes Och, right? Because if the child does survive, well then Reuven has progeny, and Shimon and Sarah should not have done Yibum together. So I understand why Rabbi Eliezer says that in this case of Yibum they cannot remain together even if the child does not survive, because they got themselves into a risky situation regarding Eishes Och. Aval Hasum derabanan k'rabanan svirle, but maybe in the other case of when Reuven's friend marries his widow, and where it's just a derabanan, there's no issue of Eishes Och over here. It's just an issue derabanan. So then maybe in that case, Rabbi Eliezer would say that they, like the Chacham, that they can ultimately get remarried. Inami, alternatively, Adkan Lukam Reb Meir Hasam, the only reason why Reb Meir says that when Shimon marries his friend Reuven's widow, so Reb Meir says they can never get back together, Elam Shuv derabanan, Dafka, because it's derabanan. And the Chachamim had to strengthen their opinion even more so than we need to by Midoraisa. So, when it comes to the case of Yibum, when Sarah is pregnant and Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, so even though the child does not survive, Still, Rabbi Eliezer says that they. So in that case, you can argue that Rabbi Meir would say that they can stay together because that's an Issur D'Oraisa, and they're already gonna, it's already taken seriously. Whereas Davka, when it comes to Shimon marrying his friend Reuven's widow, there we actually, because it's D'Rabbanan, we have to be more stringent, and that's why Rabbi Meir would say that they have to get divorced and can never get remarried. Aval Hacha, when it comes to Yibum, Midoraisa Mefarish Parshe Mina, but when it comes to Yibum, because it's D'Oraisa, people will already be careful, right? Because you have to worry about Eishasach. Amarava says, when the Chacham say that when Shimon marries his friend Reuven's widow, so they cannot remain married while she's pregnant or nursing. So it means that Shimon has to give her a get. Right? And you could tell because it says Dafka Yotzi. It says that they cannot remain married. He has to let her go. He has to give her a get. Right? It doesn't just say that they stay away, right? That they separate until she's done nursing. No, it says that they mamish Yotzi. He has to give her a get. According to Chacham, then afterwards they can get remarried. But you first have to give a get. Alright, friends, let's hold it here, I think. Alright, well, that was Daf Lamed Vav, Masechta Yevamos. I gotta run. Peace out.